Hey, what's up guys? It's Disturbed. I'm going to be showing you guys what I think is the best solo 1.7 PvP build. It's great for versatility and all-around survivability, and it's just a pretty good build. Before I get into the build, I want to mention that I am still offering farming services, so if you want me to help you out and you're just too busy in order to do it yourself and you want somebody that knows what they're doing to give you their expertise, feel free to email me at disturbedmods@gmail.com and I'd be more than happy to help you out. Just to let everybody know, this build isn't going to change when 1.7 actually drops. I am on the PTS currently, but when 1.7 actually comes out, the build is pretty much the same, so I could even start working on your build right now, and then once 1.7 comes out, you'll be perfectly set up. So again, feel free to email me at disturbedmods@gmail.com and we could definitely get you set up. Now, before I actually get into the build, I really want to emphasize that it's extremely important to listen to everything I say, because if you only look at the build and just look at it from like literal face value, like if you just look at stats and everything, you're going to misinterpret everything. Because right now the build I have set up is pretty shitty because I'm not going to farm on PTS and they don't have any way of giving us actual loot, but I know how the build's going to function, and I'm going to explain along the way the ideal way to set everything up. And it's really important that you listen to everything I say, because I know it's hard to sit through a 15-minute long video, I'm sorry, but it's really important that one, you have a complete understanding of everything and how it all ties together, because the build does rely on a lot of pieces, and you know, it relies on itself to work properly, and I don't have it set up perfectly currently. And so you'd pretty much just misinterpret the entire build if you were to just look at it from face value and then be like, well, this doesn't look right, blah 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 blah. So let's get into the build, and please don't comment and go spamming your fingers. Okay, first off, yes, pieces are not working properly. Okay, I understand that. Okay, so the build that I'm using is an all high-end build, similar to how it was in 1.6. That was a previous patch, yeah, 1.6. But there's a couple changes in order to rely on Adept, which is a very important talent, which I will start delving into later. Now, one of the main concerns is, why aren't you using Ninja Bike? The reason I'm not using Ninja Bike is because even though I could make a different combination, such as 3 pieces of Banshee, which would give me the 4-piece of Banshee set, which is 10% flat damage, plus the 4-piece of Banshee, which is like the 10% less damage when you're rogue and 10% more damage against rogues, and then you could get 1 tactician for 15% skill haste, and then you could get like a vigorous test or something. The reason that I'm using this over that is because straight up this is still going to end up being more beneficial, and that Banshee build would only work in the Dark Zone. An alternative to that Banshee build I found out would be, instead of 3 Banshee, you could use 3 Alpha Bridge, and then that's 5% weapon damage plus talent Unforgiving. But then I figured that's probably still, this build is still just as good, and the only thing you're getting out of those Ninja Bike builds that this build doesn't have is 15% skill haste. But what I just decided to do, instead of getting that skill haste, was just put on a rapid chest. And the only reason you need all that skill haste is in order to use Adept. The reason that Adept is such an important talent is because it pretty much allows you to just stack a whole bunch of crit chance, and if you're able to get a ridiculous amount of crit chance during combat, then you can get a whole bunch of crit damage. And since headshot damage doesn't scale as well as it used to, putting all of your eggs in one basket for crit chance and crit damage actually is beneficial, as opposed to how it used to be. It wasn't really worth it. So that's why all these things are intermingling with each other. And even if you are going to use the build in the Dark Zone, I still think that this trumps using Banshee or Alpha Bridge or anything, because it's going to give you, one, basically the same amount of damage with Skull MC having 16% damage. Also, you're able to stack Adept, which is one of the main reasons people are using Ninja Bike with those other sets to get the skill haste from Tactician and the other damage. But you're getting the same amount of damage, and you're getting a whole bunch of versatility with stuff like Refresh, Specialized, Nimble, Shortbow, and you get the rapid chest for the skill haste. The only thing that I say that this build has a downfall is for groups, because in groups, if you have a designated healer, you'd probably prefer to run something like Vigorous, so you constantly have an overheal, and in that scenario you would probably start to use something with Ninja Bike. But since this is for a solo build, Vigorous is pretty much entirely useless, and then getting something like Refresh, Shortbow, Nimble, and Specialized is going to end up being a lot more helpful to you overall and provide a lot more versatility and make the build a lot better. That's the first thing that I wanted to go over. The second thing is that my stats are completely messed up. The only reason I have stamina here is because my gloves are terrible. But from this point on, I'm switching to these gloves So because these have the skill haste on them, and these have firearms, and this is how I'd want the build to look like. So just pretend that these striker gloves are indeed Skull MC gloves, okay? That's what we're going to pretend for right now, because my Skull MC gloves are unfortunately stamina, and I couldn't roll skill haste on them because they were pre 1.6. So that's why I can't really show you with these Skull MC gloves, because the Skull MC gloves are one of the most important parts of the build. It's just that mine are really badly rolled, and I want to show you guys what the build would actually, you know, realistically look like. And it would look like this with these striker gloves on. So you want to put as much into firearms as possible while having 2 pieces of electronics, and then I went for all firearms mods with skill haste. Let's just go into weapons, and then I'll go into individual gear rolls, and then I'll explain how adept works, and then that's pretty much going to be it. So first off, with your gun, the talents that you want to have, my gun is absolutely terrible. The talents that you want are adept, competent, responsive, in that order. You can have adept or competent in either order, doesn't really matter. But the reason you want responsive at the bottom is because, as you can see, I don't have responsive unlocked, and even if I were to have a you know, my holster is pretty much max roll in terms of stamina, I still wouldn't have responsive unlocked, and you don't want to have to put a stamina mod on. But the great part about adept and competent, if you can look at my hungry hog here, competent and adept require the exact same amount, and you're going to have this unlocked anyways because of how much you're stacking into electronics for the skill power, so that your heal is very juicy, and you already have, you know, you definitely have 2800 firearms. So not realistically, ideally you want to have adept, competent, whichever order, and then you want responsive on the very bottom. You could, instead of having responsive, have deadly. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to roll this enough in order to get competent. That's just the order that I'd prefer to have it. The reason that I have deadly is just I didn't have Phoenix credits to roll this, and that's what it is. But you could have, instead of having responsive, you could have deadly, which isn't that bad because you're stacking a whole bunch into crit chance. You could also get brutal, but on console it's not going to be very great. In terms of weapon mods, you want to just pretty much put all into crit damage. On your scope, instead of having stability, you'd want headshot damage, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get a god roll there. Muzzle, crit damage, crit chance, headshot damage. On the grip, you want crit damage and reload speed, and on the magazine, you want mag size, crit chance, and rate of fire. Moving on to your second weapon, doesn't really matter, you can use whatever the hell you want. For the main weapon, you always want it to be a lightweight M4, because M4s, regardless of going into crit chance and whatnot, it's still way better than an SMG is ever going to be, considering the base headshot multiplier, the base damage multiplier, RPM, the way enemy armor damage scales in PvP. Even though it's not great, it's still extra free damage. It's just overall going to end up being way better than an SMG pretty much ever can be, and most SMGs just can't even hold a candle to an M4. So that's why we're still going to be going with an M4. And then for our gear rolls individually, for the chest piece, you want a rapid chest so that it decreases the cooldown on your heal. This is going to make it to where you can stack adept, and I'll show you guys how I'm able to stack adept efficiently right after this. So you want to get skill haste and health. On your mask, you want to go for skill power and burn resistance so you don't have to deal with as many flame turrets, and skill power just so your heal is going to end up being better. And then on your knee pads, you can either go for health or skill power. It's pretty much up to you, and then you want to make sure to get burn resistance as well. On your backpack, you can either go for health or skill power. I'd say it's probably good to have skill power on both the backpack and the knee pads, but it really doesn't matter because it ends up being tit for tat almost, because one thing of health, just like one bullet takes off this much health, but also this much skill power directly translates into how much your heal is going to be healing for, because the way the overdose scales is entirely linear. So let's say this is 12,000 skill power. That means overdose is not going to heal for exactly 12,000 more, because that's the way that it scales, which is coincidental. So it really doesn't matter if you go for health or skill power on the knee pads or the backpack. It's pretty much up to you and what rolls you get. It's not that big of a deal, because getting skill power doesn't actually affect your skill cooldowns. It does, but it's by a very minuscule amount, and you'll already be able to stack adept just by getting skill haste on everything. So on your gloves, you're going to want to go for skill haste, AR damage, and crit damage. You don't want to go for crit chance because you already have enough of that. Or actually, you could go for crit chances so you have a base decent amount of crit chance. So it's up to you whether or not you get, just make sure to get skill haste and AR damage, and the other one you can go for crit damage or crit chance. And then on the holster, you want to make sure to go for skill haste, and then on your mods, you want to make sure to go for skill haste everywhere. Pretty much the whole point is just stack into skill haste as much as possible. The reason we're doing that is it's going to make our Overdose have a 26-second cooldown along with Rapid, and it's going to make our Recon Pack have a 20.9-second cooldown. The reason we're using Recon Pack is because Scrambler and Tactical Scanner have way too long of a cooldown, and Recon Pack is overall better than Tac Scanner anyways. Tac Scanner only has a 2% more crit damage, but Recon Pack has 3% more crit chance, which is overall better anyways. And Scrambler you could use, but the problem is just it has too long of a cooldown, so I would still recommend Recon Pack anyways. It doesn't really matter that your pulse is going to get blocked out because they could just use precision anyways, and I highly doubt their pulse is extremely powerful anyways. Now we're going to be using Overdose, of course. No reason to use Booster Shot when it only heals you for 88k. By the way, the actual healing number right here is bugged. It's just because of Rapid. If I switch from Rapid to something like, not Barret, if I switch from Rapid to this Vigorous chest, as you can see my skill power is 167, and it heals me for about 172. It starts to scale a little bit up, but it's a little bit north of 167. It's just a little bit broken when you put on a Rapid chest. It's really weird. But anyways, these are the skills you want to run. Instead of Recon Pack, you could also use Sticky Flash, because it has a similar cooldown. You could use either Flashbang or the Disruptor, which is the EMP one. It's up to you. I wouldn't recommend, you could also use the Immunizer for the heal, because that's only a 17-second cooldown. The reason you want everything to be on such a low cooldown is because with the talent Adept, you're able to stack it multiple times in a row, getting up to 35% crit chance, which is pretty insane. So as you can see right here, I'm going to Pulse, and then Adept is going to be active for an entire 15 seconds, and so would Competent. So Competent is pretty much a free 15% damage all the time, and you want to be able to micromanage Adept properly, but it shouldn't really be that hard. And then I go for the Overdose just to stack it right towards the end. And as you're going to see, my cooldown for Pulse would have already been off, because from the get-go that's already 30 seconds, because that's 15 plus, times 2. And my Pulse is only on a 20-second cooldown. And then I go for the Pulse, and then that's going to refresh my Adept. The icon just takes a couple seconds to get back. And then by the time that my Adept is about to run out, my Overdose comes back just in time. And then I'm able to effectively stack it. And then as you can see in my character sheet, I have 24% crit chance. It's actually should be more than that. I think I just may have accidentally missed a stack. But look, if you go right there, then it's just going to stack itself again. If I go into my character sheet, okay, I think the character sheet's bugging out, but you get what I'm saying, right? You get what I'm going for. Adept just stacks over and over again, and having these cooldowns set correctly makes it to where you can stack it over and over again. Make sense? Alright. Okay, let's just see. Make sure that it stacks again. Yeah, it's just bugging out in the character sheet, is what it is. See, there it goes again, 31.5%. I don't know why it was bugging out like that, it's just the character sheet bug. Okay, anyways, that's pretty much it for that. In terms of your talents, you want to be going for critical save for the extra damage resistance when you get low health. Strike back, this will make it to where it's a lot easier to micromanage Adept, because when you get lower, you'll get your cooldown even faster, so you don't have to worry about clicking it within that millisecond. On the move is great for just killing NPCs and then getting a reduced amount of damage. Precision is good for when your pulse doesn't work on the NPC. And you can go for tactical advance if you want. You can pair that with nimble. Adrenaline is decent. Triage is good, but this is a solo build, right? So you're really not going to be utilizing that. So overall, with crit damage stacked everywhere, and then I'm going to ignore that I have deadly. Actually, no, I'll just pretend that deadly is the 15% on my gloves. And then plus Adept, which I'd say on average is probably around 3 stacks. So 3 stacks of Adept would put it at 21.5% crit chance. Plus my Pulse gets me to 21.5 plus 18.3. That's 39, so I'd say it's just 40% crit chance. Plus I get the 3% from there, 3% from there, and the 3% from there, so that's an extra 9%. So I got up to 49% crit chance, while I'm at a whopping, let's go to my character screen, while I'm at a whopping 93% crit damage, plus the 18% that's on my Pulse. So add that there, that is 113% crit damage, which is a lot of extra damage that you're going to be getting, especially when you have that much crit chance. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the build. In the future, I will be making a build for a team, which will consists of pretty much an entirely different setup. Let me just slap back on these MC gloves just so you know how it normally looks. So yeah, hopefully everything made sense, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you later.